Hello and welcome to this Caddy Book walkthrough for the Women's Global event being held this Saturday, the 6th of August in Sydney at the Newington Armoury. This event is proudly supported by Disconnection and hosted by Sydney Disc Golf Club. Okay, so before we jump into the whole walkthroughs, just a bit of information about the day. So the Newington Armoury itself, this is the map of the area. Our HQ is located near the main gate or the entry gate on Jamieson Street. Just a note not to drive into the gate. There's no parking inside the armoury, and if you do drive in, you may get locked in. Also, there is parking outside the main gate here on Jamieson Street, but this is 2-hour parking, so you may want to avoid parking there as the rangers will give you a ticket. So for free parking, if you go about 50 metres back up Jamieson Street towards Holker Street where you drove in from, there is a car park on the left here with more than enough car parking spaces. So it's just a matter of walking across the road through the entry gate here and then follow this first little road around up to the event HQ. The armoury will be open from around about 7 a.m. on the Saturday morning, so you can come in and practice, and we will have check-in from 20 past 8. We do have players packs available for the amateur players, so make sure you come along and check in and pick up your players pack. So starting out with hole number 1, which is a 84-metre par 3, and this is called Surgical Strike. This is also the first of our CTP holes, so for the MPO, MA1, MA40 and MA50 players, this is your nearest the pin, and it's sponsored by Disconnection. So this hole is, as you see it, there's a lot of OB. There's a couple of different routes. You can see there's a straight gap straight towards the basket, but it is very low ceiling. And if you do hit these trees at the front are in the OB, so just be careful of that. The other route is the hyzer route out to the right-hand side where you can bring something in and hopefully skip it down the hill. But yes, OB, we've got some bollards over on the right side that you'll be able to see, and then from the end of the bollards there'll be a line that comes along to the path, and then the inside edge of the path down to the road, and then around the edge of the road to the concrete block or the concrete slab near the clubhouse for the HQ, and all of that is OB. The path section here just to the right of the OB is safe, so if you do land on this bit of path here, that is okay. Also, just be careful with the trees. The trees are very grabby, so if you do throw your disc high into them, it is very likely that they will stay up there. But other than that, all the OB general rules apply, so your last point where you cross the OB is where you take your drop from. Hole 2, par 3, 81 metres, and it's called Parked. This one has a very tight fairway and an unusual shape as well, with lots of OB. So the basket is up there, you'll see it. It's just in front of a sign behind it, so the sign marks the rear of the OB. And then down the left-hand side, you'll see some of these logs up on concrete blocks. The inside edge, so the fairway side edge of these logs marks the OB line, and we will mark a bit of paint line up around the basket. But if you're away from the basket, it is the inside edge on the fairway side. So look straight down from the log, and if you can't see any disc inside the fairway, then it's OB. So that marks all the way down the left-hand side that cuts in and out like a sawtooth. Also, this car park, this bitumen area in front of the tee is also OB. And then up the right-hand side, we have these concrete blocks, which mark the OB line, and then when you get up closer to the basket, it will cut in and go over towards the fence, and you'll see a painted line up there. Now, if you don't manage to cross OB off the tee, you will be re-teeing. Other than that, it is normal OB rules apply, so if you do cross the OB from inside the fairway, then you take it that your drop from that location. And hole number 2, Parked, is sponsored by Berg's Bags. Hole 3 is the first of our par 4s at 197 metres, and it's called Ballistic. So this hole is a long one, so you want 2 good shots. It is relatively open. You can see there's a couple of trees on the left-hand side here off the tee, and you've got a few out to the right. Just be careful of the OB down the left-hand side. This is marked by the bollards, and we'll also have a painted line that continues on to the edge of the creek. And then the mow line at the creek around to the fence, and then up along the fence to the OB line from the previous hole, so from hole 2. Nothing really too difficult about this hole, just to stay away from the OB, and normal OB rules apply. And hole 3 is sponsored by Chain Clankers and their podcast. Hole 4 is a 91 metre par 3, again with OB on either side. So you can see the basket tucked into the corner up there, and this hole is called Up Typha Creek. And first of all, you need to deal with this large gum tree just off the tee. Make sure you give it a bit of space. And then make sure you don't throw into the creek. So anything in the creek, so in the deep grass or over the creek, is OB. And you've also got the road running down the back or the right-hand side. Anything on the road or over the road is also OB. And normal OB rules apply. And hole 4 is sponsored by our title sponsor, Disconnection. Hole number 5, a 98 metre par 3 called Jailbreak. This one is a longish hole, and the real thing you need to be careful of on this one is the mando. So the basket itself is tucked inside the tree line. There is a mando that you will see. It'll be very clearly, that has some tape around it, and the mando line itself will be marked by tape, which will go out. So you do not want to cross over that line that's marked by the tape. If you do, you'll go to the drop zone, which is just next to this tree here, just on the right-hand side of that. So you do have a long putt to try and save your par if you miss the mando off the tee. Generally, though, you'll want to stay well out to the right and give yourself either lay up out there and play for the par, or if you attack it, you've got to make sure that you make that mando. There is some OB as well. If you do manage to throw too far and you throw it over the fence, then normal OB rules apply. And hole 5 is sponsored by Max Lift Apparel Australia. Next hole is hole number 6, one of our shorter par 3s at 62 metres, and this is going to be another CTP hole that is open to all players on the day. So hole number 6 is called Hideout. It does have a lot of trees. You've got trees on the right and on the left you need to miss. But otherwise it's just play it down the gap with a slight bit of hyzer and try and park it under the basket, or even do yourself an ace run if you can. Fairly straightforward besides all the trees. There is a little bit of OB there on the right-hand side down on the road, but it's very difficult to get there. So generally shouldn't be an issue. But if you do go OB, normal OB rules apply. And hole number 6 is sponsored by Disconnection. Hole number 7 is a 154 metre par 4, and this is one of our newer holes. It's called Supply Drop, and it will require a spotter. You will be throwing over a couple of roads, so it would be good if one of the players in the group can just keep an eye on those roads and make sure that when you are throwing that the area is clear. This one's all about placement. So first of all, you got to try and hit the gap, get out through this gap in the trees here, and you've got a mando tree. So just down there, the first big tree on the right is a mando tree, so you need to stay left of that. And so you're really looking to lay up in this area to the left of the mando, and then shoot across the OB area to the basket. So you've got the roads in front of the tee. There's 2 of them. They're both OB. And you've got the road down near the basket that curves around. And on the other side of the road is also OB. Now we've made it so that any shot that goes OB off the tee, you go to the drop zone. So the drop zone for the OB is over near the normal tee for hole number 11. So over under the tree there in the corner. If you miss the mando, there's a drop zone next to the mando tree. After you've thrown from your second shot, or if you've thrown from the OB drop zone, normal OB rules apply. And hole number 7 is sponsored by Dark Ace Disc Golf. Hole number 8 is a 166 metre par 4, and it's called Minesweeper. And this one also requires a spotter. You will be throwing over a road in front of the tee, so just make sure that there's no cyclists or walkers on there. And also just to give it a quick check to make sure that there's no people up in the area on the other side of the road. So this one here is about hitting the gap off the tee. So you've got a couple of different routes through the trees, or you can try and go over the top. You can even maybe try a safe hyzer over there. Or if you don't have the distance, you can lay up short and then cross the road. Once you do cross the road, and the road is OB, so if you do go OB, normal OB rules apply on this hole. Once you cross the road, there will be an OB line running down the left-hand side. So that starts on top of the bunker, which you can sort of just see here on the left-hand side, and it runs across the top of the bunker, and then at the end of the bunker, it runs in a straight line to the tree down near the basket. It does open up just before it gets to the tree, so as you can still attack the basket and not worry about going OB on the left-hand side. There is also OB out on the right, the road or over the fence out here past the trees, and the fence down near the basket as well. But it's pretty difficult to go OB. It is also very deep in the bushes over on the right hand side. So if you throw your disc in there, it's almost going to be like taking a penalty anyway. There is also a pile of mulch on the road, the second road. This second road, by the way, is not OB. If you do land in the mulch, you may, if you wish, to take relief at the closest point behind the mulch and in line with the basket. So you can't take relief as far back as you want. You can just put your marker at the back of the mulch pile. So hole number 8 is sponsored by Delicious Discs. Hole number 9, 75 metre par 3, and it's called Bunker Buster. This one is, again, fairly straightforward. You'll be throwing through a gap in the tree, so you want to try and miss the trees on the left and the right. And the road that's just in front of the tee, between the basket and the tee, is not OB, but there is the OB line from the previous hole. So you'll see that marked with a painted line across the top of the bunker, and then also down along the road behind the basket. So normal OB rules apply, and a reminder that that road, the first road, or the path out to the right is not OB. And hole number 9 is sponsored by Max Lift Apparel Australia. Moving on to hole number 10, which is an 89 metre par 3, and this one's called Perimeter Defence. And again, we would like you to use a spotter on this hole, as you've got the road passing around the left-hand side. So just be aware of cyclists and walkers coming towards you from behind the basket. So that road and everything to the left of the road is OB, and normal OB rules apply. So it's fairly straightforward. You just want to make sure you don't skip down the hill into the OB. And hole number 10 is sponsored by Never Gone. Hole number 11 is a 73 metre par 3 called Trajectory. So this one is a slight modification on one of the normal yellow holes. We have brought the tee forward actually a few metres to take out the gap out that's normally out on the right hand side. So you've got a couple of gaps here that you can go through. There's a gap here between these two trees. There's also another hyzer gap out through these two trees here. Or if you like, you can go further out to the left. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward. The road in front of the tee here is not OB, so if you are unlucky enough to hit the tree and drop on the road, you will just play it as it lies. But beware of the OB behind the basket. So the deep grass there behind the basket is OB. So if you do go in there, normal OB rules apply. And hole number 11 is sponsored by Dark Ace Disc Golf. Hole number 12 is a 113 metre par 3 called Outflanked. So this one has a fairly open fairway, no trees to contend with, but you do have to deal with the OB, which narrows as you get closer to the basket. So on the left-hand side, there is the road, marks the edge of the OB, and then the edge of the creek. So where it's been mowed down along the edge of the creek there is the edge of the OB. And if you go over the creek, you're also OB. And then on the right-hand side, there is a bit of a cut. There's a bit of an inlet there for the creek. So all of that mowed area or unmowed area in there is OB as well. So if you go in there, normal OB rules apply. You take your drop at the point where you cross the OB line. So fairly straightforward, but a very risky one to attack off the tee. And hole number 12 is sponsored by Ladies First Disc Golf. Hole number 13 is a 103 metre par 3 called Restricted Area. So this one you'll probably see the top of the basket off the tee. So this one makes it a little bit more difficult to judge the distance. The basket is tucked into a little bit of a corner in the OB. So you can see the edge of the creek here. So where it's mowed. So if you're in the deep grass, you're OB. And if you're over the other side of the creek as well, you're also OB. So you want to make sure you stay on the mowed area. And so that runs down to behind the basket, and then it loops back around. There's a drainage gully or ditch that runs up the right-hand side there. And the OB line there is marked by the mower line. So if you're in deep grass down in that ditch or on the other side, you are OB. And again, normal OB rules apply. So take your drop zone from where you last crossed the OB line. So hole 13 is sponsored by Berg's Bags. Hole number 14 is a 60 metre par 3 called Purple Heart. And this is our shortest par 3, and it's the CTP hole on Saturday for all female divisions. So it's an island hole, as you can see, with an island shaped like a heart. So teeing off the road, everything is OB except for the island around the basket. So it's generally a 10 metre circle that is with a bit of a pointy area on the front that gives you a bit more landing area for those that don't have a strong arm. If you don't land on the island, you can then proceed to the drop zone, which is up here on the road on the right side, and you'll be playing your third shot. After you play from the drop zone, normal OB rules apply. So if you do throw from the drop zone and you throw it and you go OB, you'll go from where you last crossed the OB line. And this hole is sponsored by Disconnection with the CTP prize by Shakti Mat Australia. Hole number 15 is a 152 metre par 4 called Diffused. So this one has a couple of mandos to keep you away from the buildings on the right-hand side. So these buildings do have asbestos in them, so we want to make sure you don't throw your discs into them or damage them. So there's some mandos here on the left-hand side, and also one on the right to make sure you don't go taking any crazy routes. So off the tee, you basically want to throw one up between the first two mandos. The road, if you do manage to land on it, is safe. It's not OB on this hole. But you want to stay to the right of the second gum tree here. And then ideally you want to get it through the gap and a little bit up past that gum tree and as far out to the left as you can. Then up on the right-hand side, you'll see some paperbark trees. So the first mando is the second one at the end of the shed there. And then there's another mando up near the basket. It is the leftmost tree that you'll see up there. So you need to stay left of that. And you basically want to hook your shot around, and you'll find the basket is tucked in behind this second white building. So in behind it is where the basket is located. So all of the mandos will be marked with a bit of white line, which will continue off to infinity. There will also be some tape. If you do miss any of the mandos, there will be a drop zone next to the mando trees. So if you miss this first one, it'll be just next to the tree on the right, and then you'll have 2 other mando drop zones up near the basket. Also, if you do manage to throw one a bit too long, there is a road behind the basket, and that is OB, and everything behind the road is OB as well. So just be careful of that one. And hole number 15 is sponsored by Disc Doctor. Hole 16 is a 81 metre par 3 called Incursion. And this one is fairly straightforward. There's just some OB roads in front of the tee and running to the right, and also back around the basket as well. There's some OB road there as well. There are some paths. You'll see there's 2 paths that run either side, and the driveway near the house there, they are not OB, they are safe. So no issues there. Just be careful too. Also, there is a signpost on the edge of the road there, right in line with the basket. So make sure you don't hit that off the tee. But otherwise, fairly straightforward. And hole number 16 is sponsored by Disc Doctor. Hole 17, 76 metre par 3 called Muzzle Flash. And this is our CTP hole for our MA2, MA3 and MA4 divisions. So a fairly straightforward downhill, but you need to hit the gap. Make sure you don't hit these trees near the tee. There is also OB. You'll see there is a roadway running down the right-hand side there that marks the OB on the right. So if you're on that road or over it, you're OB. And there's also the main road that runs down behind the basket. It also is OB, and everything on the other side of that basket is OB, or that other side of that road is OB. If you do go OB, off the tee, you go to the drop zone. So over here near the concrete pad, there is a drop zone. So if you're brave, you can run your third shot, maybe say par. Otherwise, you'll be laying up for a bogey. Once you've thrown from the drop zone, normal OB rules apply. So if you do manage to run it, you hit the basket, and then it rolls OB onto the road, you will take your drop from the where it went OB. And hole 17 is sponsored also by Disc Doctor. And on to our final hole, hole 18, which is a 94 metre par 3 called Barracks. Again, fairly open, straightforward shot. You've got the one big tree in front, so you can go left or right. There are some trees also, some tight bushes there on the right-hand side, which do protect the OB car park. So it is very hard to end up in the OB car park. But if you do end up on the bitumen there, that is OB, so you will take your drop from the nearest point where you cross the OB line. The road also down the bottom of the hill is OB and everything on the other side. But the path just here in front of the tee is not OB. So as we said, fairly straightforward, left or right gap, and try and get yourself a birdie. And hole 18 is sponsored by Disconnection. So just some important notes here to remind you of the end. We talked about the parking, so make sure you park in the free parking on the left-hand side. Out of bounds areas, so we've put in all of the notes there and on each hole where the OB areas are, but basically any unmowed grass on either side of the creek is OB. And we'll put down some painted lines where the mow line is not as clearly defined. But yes, if your disc is completely surrounded by long grass, you are OB. Most of the roads are also OB, except for where we've put a note in. To measure out your 10-metre circle, we're going to put a rope or a string on each basket. So if you need to check if you're inside the circle, you can pull that string out and check. For scoring on the day, we're going to be using the PDGA app. So the address is there, pdga.com/score. And the password for the event is WGE Sydney, all lowercase. And we need 2 players on each card to do the scorecard. So the PDGA app, for those people that haven't used it, is very good. If there's a mistake, if anyone puts in the wrong score, it's very quickly highlighted, and the 2 players can fix up their errors. So if you've got any other questions or issues on the day, the tournament director is Lisa Wallace, and she can be contacted there on the mobile number, or you can also try messaging us through through Facebook on the Sydney Disc Golf Club page. Our schedule for Saturday is that the Armoury will open up at around about 7 o'clock. They say at sunrise, but let's say 7 a.m. It may be earlier, it may be a bit later. We will have our check-in available from 20 past 8, and you can also pick up your players packs. And at 8:45, we will have our mandatory players meeting. And we'll try and get round 1 commenced as soon as possible, but no later than 9:15. We're expecting about 2.5 hours for round 1, with lunch commencing around about 11:45. So make sure that once you've finished your round that both scorecards have been submitted before you disappear from the course. There are some cafes nearby. You can duck up into Newington. There's some restaurants and cafes up there. Or down near the riverbank as well. Or bring your own. We will have drinks available for purchase from Event HQ, and we'd like everyone back at HQ by 12:45 so that we can let everyone know what group they're in and get round 2 underway by 1 p.m. We should then be finished by 3:30, and if there's any playoffs or tiebreakers to be done, that will be done straight away. And we will aim to get our presentation underway by 15:45. So that is pretty much it. A reminder, or big thanks to our sponsors. So our primary sponsor is Disconnection. Big, huge thanks to them. They've been a great sponsor of Sydney Disc Golf, and great to have them on board again. A few new sponsors this time. We've got some great prizes on offer from Shakti Mats, Ladies First Disc Golf, Max Lift Australia. So they're for the women only. We've also got some great sponsors and prizes from Disc Doctor, Berg's Bags, Dark Ace Disc Golf, Delicious Discs, Never Gone, Heavy Metal Band, and Chain Clankers Podcast. So huge thanks to all our sponsors. And if you've got any questions at all about the Caddy book, please bring those questions along to the players meeting on the Saturday morning, or just drop us a quick message through the Facebook page, Sydney Disc Golf Club. Otherwise, we'll see you all bright and early on Saturday morning for what's looking to be a huge event. So see you all then.